So the Civil War happens, the fourth white man American Civil War, Abraham Lincoln, slaves, Kentucky had brother versus brother. After Kentucky wins the Civil War, Kentucky chose to be with Lincoln, stuck with the Union, sent more troops to the Union side, 100,000, 80,000 or so fought for the Union, 30, 50,000 fought for the Confederacy. So way more troops fought for the North. Kentucky was on the right side of history. They picked the right side, and then as soon as the Appomattox Courthouse came, as soon as Lincoln was slayed, then they elected all these fucking Confederates back into power. So Kentucky was Union during the Civil War, become Confederate after the Civil War. We didn't even pass our 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment until 1976. The Civil War amendments, the amendments that allowed black people to become citizens and to be allowed to vote, we in Kentucky did not pass that until 1976, after the Civil Rights Act, after Martin Luther King, 1976. That's when finally the Confederate rule had been checked and we started to see a break in the dam and a different world. So, Louisville Mayors. Louisville Mayors, we have Paul C. Barth, who I've been talking about for a while because Paul C. Barth, he eventually kills himself, but Paul C. Barth brings up a fucking big-ass fucking leader, behind-the-scenes, shadowy fucking, corporate owner, piece of shit in the background, a Confederate Catholic who's running prostitution, running gambling rings. He's got a burlesque show. And he's, just a corrupt bastard. He's a political boss. He's intervening in all these elections, doing anything and everything. He's a police chief. He used to be a Confederate. When he's police chief, he's harassing everybody. Make sure you vote for me. Making sure the Republicans had no access to the voting booths, having long lines, intimidating black voters. Just go on down the line, even annulling entire elections. One election, he's going around door to door. He says he thought that his candidate was going to lose, and so the election come to you. So that's how, he's so fucking corrupt. He makes it look good. We're going to fucking go to your house and you can vote for who you want when I'm at your house. But when I'm at your house, you're going to vote who the fuck I say for you to vote for. So that's interesting that the elections, was actually run by the way he said that they should be run just because he thought he was going to lose. And so he was able to get the motherfuckers to go along with him. In 1900, William Justice Goebel was the only governor in America to ever be assassinated, and that was happened right here in Kentucky. And it wasn't because he was a bad person or corrupt. They have all these bad fucking things that they're saying about him, but these are the fucking Confederates. This is Basil W. Duke. This is Caleb fucking Powers. This is, I want to say William Howard. Jim Howard. Jim Howard's the one that fucking most likely killed Governor William Goebel, and he come out of Clay County. So these goddamn fucking bushwhacking fucking Confederate pop shot fucking white supremacist psychopath, these fucking bastards, man. Not only are they fucking racist, they just hate every fucking thing. They hate life. It's a sadistic love. They're just bad human beings. So I don't need to convince you of that part because that's clear. But let's keep on going. Let's see. John Henry Whalen had attempted to bribe a senator to oppose Goebel just weeks before the assassination. So he's paying somebody to oppose him. Hey, don't vote for him in this, in this election coming up. So he tries to do it. Then there is the massively corrupt 1905 Louisville mayoral election. This is Paul C. Barth. So 1905, horrible fucking corruption going on. Eventually, the Kentucky Court of Appeals invalidates the elections of Paul C. Barth and all the Democrats, and it was the beginning of the end of John Henry Whalen's machine's power to buy elections outright. So he had the mechanisms of the election. He was getting motherfuckers to canvass neighborhoods to get people to vote, to get his buddies to vote for him. He's going to bring the election to them. And he even annulled a primary. So the primary went to the opposition. He said, nah, the primary didn't count. And somehow that shit stood up. So whereas he had complete fucking control after this Paul C. Barth debacle, once Paul C. Barth got in there in the office, the Kentucky Court of Appeals saw that it was a fucking bullshit election, that it was all horseshit, and so they invalidated Paul C. Barth's election and every other Democrat, and they removed every fucking elected official because of what happened in 1905. After that, so he's not over, his power's not over, he was actually able to get two more fucking people elected. He got P. Booker Reed elected. This is John Henry Whalen. John Henry Whalen got P. Booker Reed elected. He got William O. Head elected and John H. Bushmeyer elected. So Louisville Mayors, he was able to get Well, 4 elected, considering Paul Barth was elected too. He was invalidated, but he did serve 2 years. So at least 4 fucking mayors. Just John Henry fucking Whalen was able to get his people into power. And it says actually he was controlling Kentucky politics too. Any statewide race, so governor's elections, senator elections, any fucking statewide position, any national position, Louisville politics, John Henry Whalen was the fucking man. If you're in Louisville and you didn't know that, you need to know that because that's about your hometown. You don't think the Confederates fucking still run fucking things around here today? You don't think there's any fucking white supremacists running shit around here? You don't think there's any owners in the shadowy fucking, in the shadowy parts of the fucking political establishment? You don't think there's like some fucking... Mayor Fisher ain't doing what we want him to do. He's anti-Occupy, so he's anti-working class, anti-90%, 99%. He doesn't really give a shit about that. He's owned by Insight, and he's owned by Cordish companies. So he has people in the background that's telling him what to do. And this is just what we know. We know about the legalized bribery because it's on the fucking books, but who actually is pulling, Greg Fisher's strings? Hopefully he's independent. Hopefully he's his own man. He was able to get elected, but he had a huge war checks. He had $2.5 million. So Greg Fisher somehow was able to get $2.5 million, and then with that money, maybe he made it all himself. Fucking doubt it. I doubt that shit. So $2.5 million. He's beholden to some people, right? Shit, they impeached Philip Tomper for bribery, but you're allowed to there's legalized bribery in our political establishment now. You're allowed to put in political campaign donations. Here's some money, and what they're not going to do what the fuck you want them to do. You just give them a shit ton of money for them to get elected. Of course you're going to expect them to do what you want. Now it's possible Teddy Roosevelt got bought out by the trust, and then he was a trust buster, and he was like, the motherfucker wouldn't stay bought, right? We paid him, and he just wouldn't stay bought. So that's what this man, John Henry Whalen, represents. He got his candidates in 1905 and 1913, relying increasingly on race-baiting tactics. So again, the fucking white supremacist Confederate, all the way up, it's 1909, 1913. It's 2013 now. We still got fucking dickholes just like, his philosophy. I don't know about his balls if we got, fucking boss hog motherfuckers around here. But 1909 and 1913, he got his mayor candidates elected, and the way he did it was through race-baiting tactics to insinuate that blacks would be given equal rights if a Republican was elected. Oh, you're going to vote for them? Black people are going to be just like you? Fuck you. The machine lost its power after John Henry Whalen's death. So that was the best fucking thing that could have happened with Louisville. Nobody could stop this motherfucker. He was out of control, doing whatever the fuck he wants to do. Had shit tons of power, using, whatever mechanism in order to do behind the scenes fucking secretive shit. And then, once he died, his political machine died along with him. But while he was alive, he was a fucking man in Louisville for, it seems like, for 1, 2, 3 decades. And so John Henry Whalen was popular amongst Catholics, immigrants, and blue-collar workers, and they were often at the center of his schemes. So he was pro-Catholic, he was Catholic, pro-immigrant and shit, just didn't like white people. So he's just like Andrew Jackson in that sense. He's pro-democracy for poor whites, but anti-anybody else. And, he's actually for immigrants, whereas before, Louisville had the 1855 riots, which he was not at. They did not like Catholics or immigrants or Germans or Irish. And even though the Germans and the Irish and the Welsh and the Scots-Irish and English were the ones that founded Kentucky. So death and honors, John Henry Whalen was made a Kentucky colonel. He's known by the nickname Colonel Johnny. Is also given the Cross of Honor, the highest award of the Daughters of the Confederacy. So great, Daughters of the Confederacy. They're the ones that put the big-ass U of L Confederate statue up. Eventually, John Henry Whalen's buried in Louisville St. Louis Cemetery. John Whalen's estate, Springbank Park, became Chickasaw Park. Chickasaw Park? Perfect. Fucking perfect. You took a white supremacist, his fucking land and his fucking building and shit, and you turned it back into the Native Americans who was here to begin with. Chickasaw Park. So that's awesome. His home at 4420 River Park Drive was raised in 1947 and became the site of Bishop Flaggett High School. So Chickasaw Park is on the land of fucking John Henry Whalen. So you go to fucking Chickasaw Park, that's where John Henry Whalen was hanging out, and it was Bishop Flaggett High School. So that's like a high school for a while until it was not a high school no more. I think it's on 4420 River Park. So that's the 44th Street in River Park. So that's all the way like at the very tip of the West End. 44th and River Park Drive in the Shawnee neighborhood of Louisville. It existed. It was a Catholic college preparatory high school in Louisville, Kentucky's West End from 1942 to 1974. So the high school was in operation for 30 years. So his shit was actually more responsible to the public than he was. John Henry Whalen's land and house was more beneficial to society than John Henry Whalen himself. Chickasaw Park. When the other Olmsted parks in Louisville were closed to blacks in 1924, Chickasaw was the only one that remained open to them until the parks were desegregated in 1954 by Mayor Andrew Brodess. So that's important. Andrew Brodess. He desegregated the parks in Louisville. So that's a fucking mayor of this town, right? So we need to know about Andrew Brodess. He desegregated the public parks, including Chickasaw. And Chickasaw, that's named after the Native Americans. There used to be the western part of Kentucky was the Chickasaw lands. That's where the Chickasaw lived. But they call it the Jackson Purchase because Andrew Jackson, along with Isaac Shelby and some other folks, was able to purchase that land, I guess, from some Chickasaws, and so they called it the Jackson Purchase, right? It was Jackson's fucking land. There's also Jackson County, and Jackson's a fucking genociding, Trail of Tears, fucking Indian killing piece of shit. And so Andrew Jackson was able to put his name on top of Indian land, and so was William Rogers Clark, and so was basically, you know, 2/3 of the counties of Kentucky are named after plantation owners or Indian killers. And so you have desegregated public parks. Chickasaw. So there's actually Chickasaw Park was the exact opposite. You had John Henry Whalen, who was a piece of shit all of his life, 3 decades, controlled Louisville politics, and was a white supremacist piece of shit. But eventually, he was his stuff, you know, his land was changed into Chickasaw Park, so he was able to actually take away from the white supremacists and give back to the Native Americans, which is a nice reverse. And there's lots of actually countercurrents in Kentucky. So Kentucky's got a lot of bad shit going on, but there's a lot of hope. You know, Muhammad Ali, 1966, the Civil Rights Act, we passed the first states' Civil Rights Act, 1966, so immediately after the national government did. Martin Luther King marched on Frankfurt, and he got his civil rights passed right here. We have Muhammad Ali, we got George Clooney, Johnny Depp, Ashley Judd, Hunter S. Thompson. So we got a lot of progressive thinkers here, not just white supremacists. John G. Fee, the one who established Berea. So, Paul C. Barth. Yeah, Paul C. Barth had the political backing of John Whalen. Barth won by over 4,800 votes, but the election was fiercely contested by the Fusionists, who alleged rampant ballot tampering and voter intimidation had been used by the Democrats. So Joseph T. O'Neill was a Fusionist. He was wanting to combine progressives with the Republicans to go against the white supremacist Democrats. So this is amazing. It's amazing how topsy-turvy the current political state is. Jefferson County Circuit Court, they had ties to John Henry Whalen, right? The fucking Circuit Court, the felony fucking court, and they upheld the results by a 2-to-1 vote. So there's 3 people on the Circuit Court. And they upheld what he was doing. The Kentucky Court of Appeals eventually found out about it, and they did not uphold it. They ruled the election was invalid in May 1907, and they threw all the Democrats elected in 1905 out of office. So Paul C. Barth his election, everybody that got elected along with Paul C. Barth, is fucking thrown out on their fucking ass. And they're thrown out on their fucking ass by the Kentucky Court of Appeals. The Kentucky Court of Appeals invalidated the election, said that it was bullshit. This is after Goebel. Goebel had been shot for just 4 years, and election corruption was rampant all across the state of Kentucky, and they found out about it. So fuck Paul C. Barth and all the Democrats who got elected in 1905.